Welcome back to Morning Express. It is now 21 minutes after 8 Kenyan time, and it's time for us to look at our health. On Wednesdays, we highlight, things to do with your health. And one of the things that we must admit is that we've become a very stressed society, and would like to look at some of the reasons why that has happened. And just to highlight what has been going on, looking at the Standard today, on page 3, we have a neighbor who killed, a neighbor killed for introducing somebody's wife to prostitution. And of course, whether that is true or not is not the main subject of discussion, but how we seek to deal with some of these things. Just below that, we have a woman in Githeri killing case pleads not guilty to charges. That's on page 3 of the Standard this morning. Looking at the Nation, we have on page 11 a young man who is facing murder charges, Mr. Kenneth Wadhugi Karume, in a Nairobi court yesterday, and he's accused of having pushed his girlfriend off a balcony, and of course that is another story. Recently, we also had an administration police officer who had to be accosted and stopped. Why? For one reason or the other, he was in possession of an AK-47, and what does he do? He begins to fire discriminately. Let's just look at what happened in this particular case as we look at why, as a society, we're getting to these levels of behavior that we cannot explain.
You steal from your junior, then you summon him for orderly room proceeding. Where's that fairness? Kwanza watu wakubwa wa AP hawana roho, I understand. Ukikosa kidogo unakunyanyasa kama mjinga. I am done. I'm tired of these things. My file is full. Na ukiangalia file petty.
Evidently a very aggravated individual right there, because he feels justice has not been done for one reason or the other. But again, our subject of discussion is not whether there was justice or not. It is how we are resolving some of our conflicts. Is it because of our stress levels being too high? Now, joining me in the studio is Dr. Catherine Siengo, who is a psychiatrist. Thank you for joining us. And of course, looking at some of these stories, and shortly we're also going to be looking at a recent happening in the banking sector and what some people had to say. But also, just to let you know at home, if you've got any questions, write them down. We'll open up the phone lines and you can ask the doctor directly. But Dr. Catherine Siengo, what is happening to our society?
There's a lot of pressures in our daily lives, and many people are getting frustrated. And when frustrations are combined with fear, then you have a lot of anger, which because people are not getting to know how to cope with the stress, then they end up with outbursts, which we are seeing, which could be turn out to be violence, and which could turn out to be either you hurt yourself or you hurt other people, because these people do not know how to deal with what they are going through, the stresses they are going through.
Okay, so would it be accurate to argue and say that as a society we actually have higher levels of stress, or is it lower levels of tolerance?
Okay, let me start by saying that there will always be stress in our lives, and sometimes a little stress makes us perform. For example, a student who is waiting for an exam will need a bit of stress to make
so stress is not
to
necessarily
have the adrenaline run and make them study harder.
Right.
But too much of stress makes us break down, and we can break down physically, mentally, emotionally. So there's a lot of things happening which are negative, and the rates of stresses are increasing, and we finding that some people are not able to adjust to the distress they are facing. So there are more stresses coming up, and again, probably we are too busy to listen, because for you to deal with stress, you actually need to identify it, listen, and deal with it. So when you have distress and you're too busy to even notice, then you will end up breaking out without even realizing it.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, one may argue and think that this is a modern day phenomenon, having stress. But I would like to believe, even in the olden days, there must have been things that caused stress. There may not be as many, and maybe the pressure was not as much as we have today because our society has changed. But there must have been things, even in the olden days, that caused stress. Would that be true?
Yes, they were there. but as our society develops also, we start moving from not just being worried about food and shelter and clothing. People want bigger things. People want to reach self-actualization. So probably in the past, all people cared about were clothing, shelter. But now you find that people want to move higher. Even moving from security, food, shelter, you want to move and reach self-actualization. People have higher standards. So we are seeing people pushing themselves harder, pushing their families harder. The society is pushing, generally has higher expectations. But we always say, when you're managing stress, it's not about the other people, it's about you. You can actually take control, despite of what is happening and how overwhelming it is. You can actually take control by, first of all, dealing with your thoughts, because you can either have negative self-talk or positive self-talk. Identifying what is stressing you, recognizing that when I start getting calls, when I start getting irritable, when I start missing sleep, when I need to drink alcohol to calm down, that I'm stressed. When you start recognizing that and purposely wanting to deal with it, then we can all take control of our lives, despite what is happening.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, what has caused us as a society, from a psychiatric point of view, to have lower tolerant levels of stress? Or is it that the stress is so much that now we are literally walking around like capsules that are just about to explode?
Of course, there are more distresses happening. There are more things to worry about happening. But also from our side also, we've also discovered that social support is breaking down. Because before, if you look at the traditional African society, when you are in financial crisis, you could go to your brother, your sister, your cousin. It was a community affair. When somebody was getting married, the whole clan will actually come and raise the dowry and go for the negotiations. As we get urbanized, you find that social support is breaking down. You could be living in a city somewhere where your closest relative is very far, and even if there is a close one, they are busy with their lives.
Activities.
So social support is breaking down. And again, we need, many people do not realize the importance of psychological health. You find that people, so long as they have no headache, so long as they have no pain, they don't sit down to see how else they can improve their lives. So yes, there is more stress. Our social fabric is breaking down. Our social ties are becoming less and less. And again, people do not know how to recognize stress and deal with it.
Okay. Well, we're going to go into some of the main causes that we may have as a society that are causing stress, but I'd like us to just look at, of course, some of the things that happen is our financial status, and with what is happening in the banking sector, that of course has shot up stress levels. And dare I say, not just for those who are banking with a particular bank, but even just by virtue of that happening, others now begin to get worried about their financial security. But let's just look at some of the reactions of those who possibly had their monies in Chase Bank when it went down, as we look at some of the causes of stress.
Niko na mtoto wa form 3, niko na wengine anaingia form 1 next year, na pesa zangu zile deposit zangu zingesaidia. Sasa sina hata vision, siona hata mbele itakuwa namna gani, wala nyumba itakuwa namna gani. I don't know the reaction of the family or the reaction of the children, because sababu tayari nalipa school fees.
Mimi mwenyewe nilicall Chase Bank and I talked to the customer care. Wakaniambia kuwa mimi kama mfanyabiashara I need not to be worried. Pesa yangu iko safe na nitaipata. So kufika asubuhi ni make a transaction hapa, nimekuwa shocked to realize kuwa siwezi nikaendelea na biashara kupata pesa yangu. Pesa yangu yenye iko hapa ndani ni pesa mingi. Actually, to be honest, pesa yangu imefungiwa ndani hapa ni 3.45 million.
Well, there you have it. That's what they had to say. Now, one of the main things, obviously, as we delve into the causes of stress, would definitely be financial.
Yes.
What are some of the other causes? And why is finance, one of the questions that came in as we were having the previous discussion here, is as Kenyans, maybe we need to ask ourselves our relationship with money.
Yes.
It seems to be a very strong relationship, but also causes us to behave in a certain manner. So causes of stress.
Yeah, causes of stress. Money, in a way, can lack of money or not adequate in money can actually make you stressed because you require a certain amount of money to be able to live comfortably. You definitely require a certain amount of money to be able to get food, get shelter, get security,
just to live a decent life.
Yes. So once you don't have that, then you reach a point where you feel like you are not in control of your life. You can't decide whether you're going to have the next meal or not. You can't decide whether you're going to pay school fees again, like we've had. So in a way, you need a certain amount of money to live a comfortable life. However, once you have the basic needs, any extra money does not bring extra happiness, and that has been demonstrated by research. So it is okay for people to have enough money to take care of their basic needs and to feel in control. Because again, when you live in a situation where you feel that you cannot make choices, like I cannot make choices whether I should wake up at this particular time or not, you feel frustrated, and that brings a lot of stress. So money could be one of the stresses, but stresses can come from the environment, can come from even our own bodies. Like if I have a physical illness, that is a stress to me.
It's a stress point.
Yes. When I have relationships issues, like
in fact, the next thing I was coming to is family. And,
yes,
and family also is a huge, and relationships is a huge part of our stress factors.
Yes. And at times we also talk about just psychological stress. Somebody will look at you and see Michael has a lot of things going right on himself, but a thought could come in your mind and say, I have not done this. And if you feed that thought, it goes negative to the point that where you are, you start feeling miserable. So stress can actually come from our own thoughts. So it could be financial, it could be physical, it could be in the environment. When you look at some areas in Nairobi, which are very congested and people live in noisy environment, like when you go to the city center, you find that there is noise, there are cars all over, there is so much chaos. The environment itself can actually put you under a lot of stress.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, at this point, wherever you're watching from, you can call in case you have a question. We have Dr. Catherine Siengo, who is a psychiatrist, and we are looking at stress management and why, as a society, we seem to have higher stress levels, lower tolerance for one reason or the other. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask the doctor, feel free to do so. We'll have the number displayed on your screen and you can call. Now, Dr. Siengo, what are some of the, you mentioned that sometimes stress is not necessarily a bad thing if the levels are okay, because, I mean, it causes us to perform. If it is exams, you will do your exams. If maybe it is at work and there's a certain stress level because of time that project needs to be done, it will be delivered. So at what point does one know that their stress levels are now beginning to go beyond what is normal?
Okay. First of all, I want to clarify it's a curve where you can tolerate a little stress makes you perform. So it's a curve. It reaches a point where you have reached your optimum level of coping with the stress, and then the performance comes down. And different people tolerate different levels of stress differently. So what I may tolerate might not be what you can tolerate, and every other person will tolerate stress differently. As to your second question, I might have lost it. Please repeat it.
And that is to say, at what point do you know that you've gone beyond normal?
Yeah, at what point do you know that you can't tolerate or you need to do something? Stress can affect our body in various ways. Physically, you might find somebody who is tensed, like outburst, irritable. You can get somebody starts getting frequent colds, common colds, or you could get somebody breakdown because stress also lowers immunity. Emotionally, you could feel very irritable, especially like the case you've raised about the financial issues going on in the banks.
The banking sector.
We've had several people get admitted in hospital. Somebody gets a panic attack. They think it's have a heart attack. You go to a doctor, they investigate, they find your heart is okay. When they try and talk to you, they discover there's something actually which is stressing you. But when you're going to the doctor, you think it's a physical illness because your heart is racing, you're shaking, you're losing breath, you feel like you're dying, which is a panic attack, which is anxiety. So your body can actually get the the physical response which comes because of the release of excessive adrenaline. So it could be physical, it could be emotional, and it could actually, you could start seeing it in performance of your work. Like if you're under a lot of pressure and it's overwhelming you, your performance will go down. Yes.
Okay, so are there ways that one can measure and tell that this has gone beyond? Because it may manifest in different ways. You've talked about a panic attack. There are others who possibly it will manifest in form of a headache. Others maybe it's a physical or pains. We've had people who literally their bodies just ache and it is just stress.
Yes.
So how does one actually identify that this is stress related and not possibly a flu or influenza like we have that is going round?
Yes, you actually, everybody needs to actually watch on themselves. Like when you realize that you're getting sudden outbursts. Because like if you're stressed here, probably when you go home, that's where you show yourself. So your child might discover that you are very irritable. Your wife might discover you're very irritable. So even your close family members can actually start seeing there's something wrong. When you start discover that you're not relating to people well, all of a sudden, then you need to question why. When you start feeling tired, overwhelmed, or get physical symptoms, of course it's good to have a checkup. So you will need to tolerate. And the sad thing is many people don't realize that their stress levels are becoming too much. They will sometimes have excuses that, oh, I'm having so much on my plate for now. This is life. This is how life is supposed to be. When you realize you're not sleeping well, when you realize that you need to take alcohol to sleep or to calm down with alcohol, because that is what is happening. People have to smoke to calm down. When you realize that you cannot relax on your own, you can't get sleep, you can't feel relaxed, then you need to realize that there's something wrong and you just need to check up your life. It's good to actually journal and see what is happening in my life. Am I taking too much? Am I handling? And sometimes we may not remove the stress. Like what is happening in Chase Bank, if you had your money there, you cannot access it now. Problem solving is one way of dealing with stress. Look at the problem you have, analyze what are the options which are there. Do I need to reduce my expenses? Do I need to borrow? Do I need to, if I borrow, what are the consequences? So look at define each problems, look at the solutions, pick the best solutions and deal with it. Of course, we teach people to also learn relaxation exercises. Learn what you like. If going to play football makes you happy, go and do it. Again, breathing exercises, I've talked about them. Eat well, eat balanced diet, make sure that you eat, make sure that you rest, and make sure that you exercise. Exercise is very important. So the basic things, sleep well. If you're not sleeping well, please see a doctor to see how they can assist you to sleep better instead of self-medicating. I've seen people take Piriton to sleep. I've seen people take alcohol to sleep. That is not healthy. You need to see a doctor so that they can see, is this lack of sleep being caused by another medical problem, or if it's stress, then how can we help you to relax through talk therapy and also through medication. Because sometimes the stress is so much, you may need actually to be put on medication to relax and to sleep for you to be able to pick up and move on.
Okay, now let's look at those who, for one reason or the other, resort to, like you've mentioned, alcohol or smoking. Some even resort to food. Others, it may be to social media. There are many ways of trying to get away or hide the stress. One, does that really help in managing the stress? And secondly, why do some tend to go that way, whereas others are able to manage more?
There are heavy ways of coping with stress. Like when I've said exercise, talking about it, even talking about it to somebody who can listen and you have confidence in. They might help you see the whole issue from a different perspective. Getting the correct information. So people need to be assisted to actually know the healthy ways of coping with stress. The difference could be knowledge, because if you know this is not healthy. Of course, if you start taking alcohol, to relieve your stress, you'll discover that your body needs more alcohol, and before you know it, you used to take 1 glass of wine, you end up taking a whole bottle of wine, you resort to spirits which are even more concentrated. Before you know it, you're addicted to alcohol. So that's not healthy. So we need to make sure that we use the healthy coping mechanisms and be aware that we don't use the unhealthy coping mechanisms, like resorting to overeating when you're stressed, resorting to outbursts, resorting to violence. We need to be sure that what we are doing is healthy.
Okay. Now, what helps us cope with stress, or what helps us manage stress? Because, like you mentioned, we have different tolerance levels as individuals. What is it that gives those who can tolerate stress a better or an advantage over those who don't? Is it medical? Is it inherited? How is it that some manage stress better than others?
Of course, our temperaments have something to do with that, and that is inborn, genetic predisposition. There are people who generally can endure a lot and remain sane. The others who are not able to do that by the fact of their temperaments and their genetic makeup. But you can learn. Even for those who find themselves not tolerating stress well, they can actually learn. And sometimes even somebody who is genetically predisposed to be able to deal with a lot can actually deteriorate, given if they stay with an environment which is negative. And because you can also learn, you can learn.
It can be a learned behavior.
It can be learned. There is the genetic predisposition, and you can learn. You can learn to just start seeing the negative in every aspect of life. You can learn to keep entertaining your mind to continue with negative self-talk, or you can learn to keep entertaining your mind to keep with the positive talk. So there is a genetic predisposition and there is the learning. And of course, given like the things I said, if you have basics, of course you are better off. You feel you're in control of your life. Yes.
Okay. And now it's one thing to identify that you are stressed, maybe because your body is telling you so, through headaches, through aches and pains, or through some of those things that you've mentioned. But it's another thing altogether to live with somebody or have a relationship with somebody who is stressed. And what would possibly be the best way, one, to identify that they are stressed? Is it the outbursts, or how else can one tell that their behavior has changed? There's something. Because if we look at the incident of the administration policeman who shot in the air, maybe those around him could have seen symptoms or things that would indicate, so that you're able to take a preventative measure, or to have a young man like the one now who is being accused of murder. But if it happened, it might have been a mistake, or it could have just been an outburst. How does one identify this in a different person so that you also secure yourself?
Yes, there are 3 things to watch for. The behavior. So if I'm normally a very calm person and all of a sudden I change, or it might not be sudden, it might be slow, my behavior changes. I become very irritable, or I was very organized person, my desk was always neat. You start finding that I'm leaving things all over. So you can note that by looking at the behavior, looking at the mood. Somebody could get depressed and feel sad most of the time, not interested in anything. So the mood, if it goes low, you can actually be able to tell that. The other thing is about thoughts. Because this person, the clip you've watched on TV, you've had him express despair. So they will verbalize it because you think and then you pass your thoughts through speech. So if you looked at the person's thoughts, behavior, and the mood, those are the things which can be able to tell you. Of course, physical symptoms, anybody can tell, including yourself. If you think your heart is pumping faster, you will be able to be concerned. You will be the first one to be concerned. If you have a headache, you'll be the first one to be concerned. If you have diarrhea, sometimes stress can lead you to that. If you have constipation, if you're not lacking sleep, those are things we can see. The things which are difficult to tell are the emotional things,
Right.
and the behavior things, the mood things, and the thoughts. So that is what everybody else can watch.
Okay.
can
so
see.
Once now you've identified that my spouse, my partner, my brother, whoever that you're relating with, my workmate is stressed and possibly beyond a level that is comfortable, how do you deal with that? Because I imagine that going to tell them, do you know why we stressed, Sana? That might not necessarily be the best way to go around it.
Yes. Of course, you can approach it diplomatically by even starting by saying you're concerned about this person's outburst. You're concerned that they used to be very happy and enthusiastic about life, and you seem that it appears like that is changing. By approaching it that I'm concerned because I care that I am seeing these changes and I feel it would be good to seek help. Even by starting that, even asking the person, is there something bothering you? Are you okay? Is your family okay? Or even asking, are you being affected by what is happening? Because you might have colleagues like who are banking in Chase Bank. You wouldn't know until you ask them. So even by asking somebody, are you okay? Is your family okay? Is everything okay? If they are your friend, they could actually begin from there. And you can actually be able to even help them look at the solutions, the possible choices of solutions they have, and help them pick the best. Sometimes you might not even need to see a health practitioner or a counselor. It can just be dealt at social
like you mentioned
level.
Once you've talked about it, sometimes it helps. Edward Kimathi calling from Meru. Good morning, Edward. We have Edward Kimathi who's calling from Meru. Good morning, Edward.
Good morning, Gitonga.
Yes, sir. Yes, go right ahead.
Yes, my question to Daktari is that sometimes back in the year 2007, I invested some money in some schemes that were there in that time. That development schemes. Hello, Gitonga?
Yes, I can hear you. You invested?
Yes, some cash in development scheme. Those were there on those days.
Okay.
And actually, in the year 2007, I wrote my about 1.6 million. And being a young investor, it is seriously affecting me, and my business went down since that time. So nimekuwa nikijaribu kununua biashara yangu sasa ni kama imeshida.
Okay.
Na sasa in fact on the way nikapata shida ya hypertension. So nimejaribu sasa kutibiwa, ni kama imeshirikana. And so siku najua kama niko na shida kama hizo, manake wakati nimeongea hiyo nilisikia naomba kwa TV. In fact, I think I've heard that I have a problem.
Okay. So you have a question, or you?
I can start. So I'm asking, so how can is this treatable? That's what I was asking.
Okay.
Is this treatable?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Edward. An interesting question then. He's given us a bit of history. In 2007, he lost his money, quite a lot of money, over $1 million shillings in a pyramid scheme. And as a result, his stress levels obviously went up, which now brought about another complication, hypertension. So the question, of course, is whether it's treatable. Let me take another question from Mohammed in Nakuru, then we can answer them together. Good morning, Mohammed.
Morning.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead to your question or comment.
I have a question to Daktari.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask Daktari about anxiety moments and the anxiety disorder.
Okay.
Because currently of late I've noticed that I cannot handle stress. I cannot handle small things which I used to handle before. They are tending to become like disorder.
Well, when you say you can't handle, what do you mean?
Like small things, small stress, like when you get financially maybe broke.
Okay.
You cannot handle such things.
Okay.
So I wanted to a clarification between anxiety disorder itself and anxiety moment.
All right. Thank you very much, Mohammed. Two questions there. Let's start with Kimathi, who wants to know, is stress treatable?
Yes, stress is manageable.
It's manageable.
Yes.
Managing is the key word here.
And he has mentioned something which we had not discussed, that chronic stress, which is not being managed, can result to chronic illnesses like hypertension, like diabetes, like heart disease. In fact, cardiologists will tell you that majority of their patients are also struggling with stress or stress contributed to them getting
to where they are.
So that is one of the complications, and that's why we say sort it out early before it becomes chronic. By chronic means it is living with you for a long period. Sort it early before it gives you a complication. And even when you have that complication, of course, if you develop hypertension, it's not just the stress alone. Of course, you'll have the genetic predisposition. Then you add on to the stress, and it might even appear earlier than it would have appeared, or in some people who have no family members who have the hypertension or diabetes, because of the excessive stress could develop that. So if you have developed hypertension, it needs to be treated. But there are other things which would help you, like exercises, eating healthy, cutting weight. You'll be amazed by when you cut weight, you feel better, you feel and for me, I cut weight, so I can actually testify the benefits of cutting weight.
You're speaking from experience.
From experience, yes.
Wonderful, and congratulations.
Yes.
I know it's not an easy thing.
Yeah. So cutting weight, eating well, physical activity, social connecting with your family members, friends, it's very important. When you have a problem, the social support becomes a backup for you. So it would be very good to connect with your social support. Both of those two callers have a problem. When you have a problem, you have to resolve it either way or not.
Okay, now Mohammed has talked about anxiety disorders and anxiety or panic attacks that you had mentioned before. One would obviously, maybe to answer him directly, would be the question of what may have caused that and what has brought his tolerance down.
Okay.
Because he's saying some things he was able to manage before, but now he's not able to manage them.
Okay. Of course, I would have wanted more details, but I'll try and figure out what could be happening with the details he has given us. So he used to manage better, now he's not managing better. I mean, he's not managing well. I told you sometimes you can learn not to manage stress well. For example, if you lived in a negative environment, you can easily be recruited to start thinking negatively. Because I said earlier, regardless of the amount of stress you are facing, we are all in control somehow. Because you either move away from the stress, reduce it. If you cannot reduce it, learn to live with it. So like if you know that for you to, when you get into the jam, it stresses you, you either learn to live near your workplace, or you learn to wake up early. Somehow you will find a way. Just
to see how you can fit into
or
it.
Or even change your job.
Right.
If you can't, then learn to live with it. Like listen to music when you're on the road. Let matatus which cross you not stress you. So in a way we have a control to deal with our stress. But sometimes it helps because excessive anxiety will need not only talk therapy, but also medication.
Okay.
So it would be good for this person to be assessed to see whether they need talk therapy alone or they need both talk therapy and medication.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me take a call from Alex Omondi in Samburu. Alex, go right ahead and keep it brief, please, because we are not doing well for time. Alex in Samburu.
Hey, how are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Alex.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I'm having a problem. I lost my wife some time back last year.
You lost your wife too?
I lost my wife through heart attack.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so that thing has really been affecting me so much. Sometimes I don't sleep. Sometimes I wake up at around 3 or 2. Yeah, and then I can't even sleep.
How long ago was this?
Sorry?
How long ago did this happen?
Okay, it's around now 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, Alex. Let's see whether we can address that. And of course, this is a traumatic experience. Again, if it's a heart attack, it probably was sudden. There was no time.
Preparation.
Yeah, preparation. So, what does he do?
Yes. Mourning, grieving, if you have lost a loved one, can be normal, but 6 months down the line, if he's not functioning, it means then it's prolonged mourning. So he needs to be assisted. I don't know at what point he is, because he didn't tell us exactly where this has left him. Is it that he's not functioning? You know, there are people who are so stressed and depressed, because this could actually be
You can't even work.
Yeah, it could actually have led to depression. So depending on where the person is, they need to be assisted. If it has reached the stage of depression, they might need both medication and talk therapy. If it's not yet severe, they could do with talk therapy. So I would encourage this person to seek help.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I think we'll wind it up right there because of time. Thank you very much, Dr. Catherine Siengo. And as usual, it's all, I don't know where time goes when subject or matter, you know, of discussion is that interesting, but we certainly can explore a bit more on that. Thank you very much, Dr. Ari, for joining us this morning. And from you, from wherever you're watching from, thank you for staying with us right here on Morning Express. This is where we're going to wind up Morning Express. Those of us on KTN News, stand by. At 9 o'clock, we've got News Truck coming up. Otherwise, still stay with us on KTN News. For those of us on KTN Home, have a good day.